Is making it in the music business all about mediocrity? Now, this is something that just popped into my mind. I'm busy doing a bunch of things around the house, taking care of my daughter and signing contracts for pest controls and all this. But man, I started thinking, man, it's just like doing a video on YouTube. And I get so many great people that tune in every day and they go, man, this is an incredible video. And I'm so glad I found your channel and all this stuff. And, I can't help but think, man, these videos should be, one of them should just blow up. It should blow up without any sensationalism or anything else. Man, this message needs to get out there. But the reality is this, man, mediocrity in the music business, it seems like it's rewarded. We all know hometown heroes that were amazing musicians. And, they're sitting at home and they're not really doing anything with their talent. And then you see some of the biggest stars out there. And man, I can't think of any big star that's, getting to be on stage. And people will say, well, they sold their soul and all this. And man, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if they've made some pact with Beelzebub or Beelzebub or whatever you want to call it. And that's why they are where they are. But maybe, greatness is intimidating. And maybe that's not what sells. Maybe what sells to people, what sells Chevrolets, what sells beer, and what sells jeans, and what sells, all these things in life that you see, people are selling. And it's, these days you're not so much selling albums, but you are selling performances. But everything seems to be mediocre. I don't think the top stars that are out there blowing it up, and man, you could sit there all day and tell me how great these stars are. And frankly, I just don't hear it. I don't hear it, but they've, some of them have figured out a way. And I can think of one that's first name is a very popular acoustic guitar company. And I think, man, it's just mediocre. The vocals are mediocre. The dancing is mediocre. The image is mediocre. But maybe that's what appeals to people. I can think of another situation where there was a pop diva in the past, and she had a little sister. Right now, the pop diva was, a child star at an early age and ended up on a reality show with her husband. But man, just could not sell records, just had a terrible amount of sales in relation to her actual talent and her ability. And she had a great look, but just could not sell. But then when the little sister came out with an album all about kind of, I'm just the ugly little sister and everybody ignores me, and kind of came out with that, from that perspective, that blew up. And if it hadn't been for a mishap on Saturday Night Live, who knows how long that career would have lasted. But I think that little sister sold like 10 or 12 million albums. And, maybe because she was relatable, maybe what people want to see on stage is a reflection of themselves. Maybe they don't want to go hear amazing music. Maybe they don't have the taste. Look, most people would prefer let's say a lot of people would prefer to eat McDonald's over having Wagyu steak. There's a lot of people who just don't have any taste. And maybe that is why when they buy music or when they go to a concert or whatever, instead of going for some Wagyu and an organic, arugula salad, they go for a double quarter pounder with cheese that's processed, that's, perhaps not the best item, obviously not as good a quality as Wagyu, but they go for fast food. They're going for the fast food music. They're going for fast food films. They're going for everything that's quick and doesn't make them feel inferior. When you see a great, musician, you can appreciate the talent. But most people, great musicianship goes over most people's heads. Perhaps society is dumbed down to the point now where they don't want to hear something great. They just want to hear a beat, something to bop their head to, and continue on their walk. There's gone of the days of pulling out an album and sitting in a room and maybe sharing some libations with friends and staring at an album cover and sitting in a beanbag chair and being completely mesmerized by the sound. Nowadays, music seems to be a throwaway thing. People just, put on a playlist and whatever pops on, they just listen to it, and nobody sits down and actually listens to an artist's real vision. Instead of going for a 3-course meal of an album, perhaps what they're doing is just going for the happy meal, wolfing it down, and then moving on with their lives. And, it's a lot of it, man. People are self-absorbed now. People are completely self-absorbed. They're too busy clicking and taking photos, and they're not thinking about anything outside their realm. They're not willing to expand their mind. They're not willing to be open to new experiences. Could it be that everybody is just in this herd mentality and just wolfing down the cheeseburgers of sound that they're wolfing down and ignoring all the beautiful sounds that are out there, all the independent artists that could use a listen. It takes a lot probably these days to sift through all the releases and to find the gems. Somewhere out there is an obscure album that probably only has a few hundred plays, and boom, it's a gem. It's an amazing experience, but nobody will hear it because everybody pulls off the road. Instead of going to the mom and pop shop and getting a home cooked meal, they go for the fries, they go for the burger, they go for the fake chocolate shake. And, what they are getting is processed music made, with as many calories as possible, that's sweetened and processed beyond recognition. And there's very real content to it. And man, it's mediocrity. Ultimately, maybe people just want something to bop their heads to and continue on with their mediocre lives. And if they were to expand their minds and improve it, I think there's a moment when there's some people that just cannot listen to anything but just kind of stock top 40, whether it's country or pop, or maybe even those old guys who just only put on our classic rock radio. Man, and I'm guilty of this. There's only 2 or 3 channels on satellite radio, which has all this music on there. There's 2 or 3 channels that I gravitate to because, frankly, I don't drive long distances anymore. And if I'm going to the store, it just put something on real quick. We'll bop our heads down the road or think of something while we're driving, and it'll get us to the grocery store. Literally drive 2 miles to the grocery store, and I'll get to hear a couple of songs on the way. And that's it, man. And so, mediocrity, wallowing in a stale state of musical interest, it just seems a part of life, man. It seems a part of life these days, and it's going to be tougher and tougher for the real artists. I mean, it was already, the great, and I talk about him on this channel a lot, the great Alan Holdsworth, who struggled his entire career, probably one of the most important guitarists in the last 30 years, 40 years, one of the most important guitar players. He changed the game. But man, his music went over most people's heads. The people that listen to pop artists, they couldn't listen to that for 5 seconds. They wouldn't get it. It wouldn't mean anything to it. It doesn't have a mindless beat that they can bop their heads to. And man, but that is a shame that people are not cultured anymore. When I was a kid, what was for dinner? It could have been anything. And you were basically told, this is what we're eating, and you can either eat it or have nothing. And it wasn't a choice of, everybody having chicken fingers and fries. I know, I'm guilty of that now. We've got a child, and when we go out to dinner and the kids' menu says chicken fingers and fries, 7 times out of 10, that's what she's going to go for. And I think society has become the chicken fingers and fries of society. Instead of looking at the menu and going, hey, this sounds really interesting. Why don't I try this? I think, if you're landlocked and you're, say, up in the Midwest, people maybe from up there maybe don't eat as much seafood. They don't try different things. My wife, she hadn't really had sushi or Thai food or any of that stuff till we started hanging out. And I said, hey, let's go get Thai food. And usually with her, it takes 2 times. Usually the first time she's like, I don't really like this. And then I have to convince her, say, hey, come on, let's go back and try something else. Okay, you didn't like that. She didn't like pad Thai because it was too sweet. Okay, well, why don't we go back and you can try glass noodles, or you can try this or whatever. And the same thing with sushi. But man, when she finally got it, she absolutely loved it. And we ended up going, like, I think 2 or 3 times in a 2-week period, which is a lot for like a sushi place, right? But she was like, to the point where I was like, okay, you like it. We've established that. And man, I think it's the same thing for music. I think if people were more educated, people would learn to have an expanded palate, that to learn to like blues, to learn to like jazz, if they were educated on these things, and instead of just force-fed crap your whole life. America maybe is infamous for that. We are a melting pot culture. We have created great forms of music from this melting pot, jazz combined with, African American music combined with the Creole and the classical music coming together and forming jazz, classical harmony, meeting rhythm and blues and all that. And the same thing can go for rock and roll and R&B and funk, and everything's kind of mixed together. You got white funk bands, you got black metal bands, you got all kinds of different amalgamations of things, but then you've got the majority of society that just wants to pull over and get some chicken fingers and fries. Their musical taste is like chicken fingers and fries or a burger and fries. And so largely people are not willing to try greatness. Their ears aren't attuned to it. They're not educated, musically enough to appreciate something more complex. But for me, who grew up listening to and learning to appreciate different forms of music and look, different rock music was a gateway to jazz. Even Stevie Ray Vaughan had what was that name of the song? Riviera Paradise or something like that. And it's essentially jazz guitar. And once I kind of figured out the basics of rock guitar, I started going, well, what is this other stuff? And for me, it was seeking out new sounds and because I knew that virtuosity required that I learn something besides just, same old pentatonic scales and same old dwa-da-dee-da, hammer-ons and pull-offs. I knew if I could take something from either classical music or jazz music and combine it with rock and roll, that I was instantly creating something new, something fresh. And, there's a fine line. You've got Eddie Van Halen, who was able to ride the top of the charts because he was somehow able to take virtuosity and turn it into a cheeseburger and fries. But then you've got guys like Yngwie, who were so European sounding, so classical sounding, that it didn't really become a cheeseburger and fries. It kind of became something else, something else European that had an audience that appealed to a lot of people, but it wasn't as easily digested. So, man, is mediocrity where music sits? Well, right now as a mass event, if you see what's on the top of the charts, if you see which wins Grammys, in the big categories, if you see, the music that's pushed out to the masses, it's largely chicken fingers and fries or burger and fries and a frosty glass of syrup, a frosty glass of sweet syrup with very little nutrients. And that is a sad thing, man, because we are much greater as a nation if we learn to embrace greatness in all aspects of our life, and especially music.